Howdy, y'all. As you can probably tell by my hat, I am Cowgirl Minion Michelle. And for this Music Talk Tuesday, I am going to be addressing some songs that discuss, in particular, the topic of evil. Now, this list is supposed to not only feature evil within the title of the song, but also reflect onto a certain concept that evil takes shape as far as the song is concerned. So without further ado, let me address the songs that need to be discussed. First out of the gate, let's discuss Evil Ways by Santana. This song is not only very cool and suave, it also has this very sort of disorienting and chillax kind of feel to it. It's almost like something that you would expect to hear at a Halloween party, actually, believe it or not. It's very catchy, and it addresses evil in a rather interesting way. As opposed to being sort of a celebratory song of evil or a song that addresses evil in some religious capacity, it's more so about a person. In particular, in this case, it's supposed to be a woman, from what I can tell. And throughout the song, he sort of describes how she's got to stop her evil ways. Otherwise, he's gonna pack his bags. And basically, that's the real gist of the song. I think the way in which Santana incorporates the instrumentals are really what make this particular song rather interesting and strong. It is sort of similar to the Evil Woman song, if you've ever heard of that one, but I like how it sort of doesn't really address the woman specifically, but addresses more of her actions. And that, like, it's what she's doing that's ultimately evil or wrong. So he's kind of stating it from that point of view and is saying, hey, you've got to change, otherwise I'm not going to stick around. And I think that ultimately works, and you can kind of feel the sort of tone that is taken with the song, and it almost tries to be sort of a look into, I think, more of the way in which he sort of perceives the woman's behavior, almost. Sort of similar to Evil Woman and how they make it, like, very just forceful and kind of out there. So it is rather interesting in that sense, and I think it's definitely worthy of recommendation, and you almost cannot not put a song that doesn't include Santana and doesn't involve evil, only because this song is rather popular and has been, I think, played significantly throughout the radio waves over the years, so definitely worthy of recommendation. Next song that I wanted to briefly address is Death, Death, Devil, 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 Evil, 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 Evil Song. And I really do not want to repeat that title because it's just way too long. And this is by Voltaire. I think it's just Voltaire and how you pronounce it. But basically, Voltaire's kind of interesting because a lot of his songs revolve around this sort of concept of evil. But what's interesting about this song is it kind of inserts sort of a dark humor approach to devil and evil, or the devil and evil. But basically, throughout the song, he's describing various scenarios that involve him. And all of them end up resulting in him saying, well, I'm going to sing the death, death, devil, 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 evil, evil, evil song. So he kind of, within the song, expresses how he's going to sing a song about evil. And it's kind of hilarious. And I think it's sort of a uh, interesting approach because oftentimes, especially around Halloween, we see sort of this trickery that kind of exists as far as evil is concerned. In particular, with the saying "trick or treat," that's already kind of clear too. So basically, what he's sort of doing throughout the song, he's just sort of taking this whole very serious concept and not trying to put uh, a very serious approach to it and just kind of look back and kind of laugh at it. Um, it's sort of similar to, like, if you've ever heard the song of Monty Python, from The Life of Brian, where they go, um, always look on the bright side of life, so to speak. I mean, it kind of displays that sort of irony, it's kind of trying to take something that we consider dark or disturbing and make light of it. And he even sort of addresses within the song how these things sort of kind of exist within reality. And, we shouldn't, I guess, really shy away from it, uh, and not always take it so seriously because it's just a part of life, as death often sometimes, or really technically for everybody, it always is. So he is really trying to take a more lighter approach to it. And I think it all just depends on if you appreciate the dark humor that's associated with the lyrics, because the lyrics, I think, are give a lot more weight to the song in particular than the instrumentals, although the instrumentals are fairly catchy, and I like how he really expresses those lyrics when he's singing the death, devil, 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 evil, 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 evil song. And he's just singing that out loud. It's just rather catchy and enjoyable to listen to, and I think you can find a lot of laughter from it and not taking it so seriously. But again, if you don't really care for that particular dog humor, that might be a turn off. But personally, I find it rather enjoyable, and I think definitely worthy of a recommendation. Third song that I wanted to mention is another song by Voltaire, and it is called "When You're Evil." Now, it may have been this may have been a song that was previously mentioned on this channel, but I'm going to go more in depth into this song and its sort of discussion of evil because it's rather different than the previous Voltaire song, where where the other song sort of addresses evil as something that should be kind of it shouldn't be taken as seriously. There should be some, there's some way in which we can laugh at it. This song looks at it through the perspective of someone who is actually evil. And it's kind of funny because he discusses like these various scenarios of how he is sort of the burden. Like I'm the fly in your soup. I'm the annoyance that you suffer from every day. He kind of places himself in that position. And in doing so, he sort of says, and it's so easy when you're evil. And he does it without any kind of pay or anything because he likes seeing the people that he sort of torments suffer, and kind of cry, so to speak. I guess you could call it maybe Schadenfreude or something to that effect, but that's really the essence of this particular song. And it does seem a little bit more sinister, although I think Voltaire is still trying to not push the boundary of taking the song too seriously. I still find it rather interesting in how he just kind of plays with the whole concept of evil, because like the previous song, it is sort of based on this kind of trickery. Like evil is supposed to bother you. Evil's supposed to be a burden to you somehow. It's and the way you make evil basically win and have their kind of hoorah is, sort of defeating yourself and kind of crying and, whatnot, instead of sort of, I guess, standing up to evil. Um, that's basically evil's enjoyment, is to see the effects of of the destruction that they create. So it really describes evil, and I think a perfect kind of in the perfect kind of definition that you would expect of someone who is in the position of being evil. And it's interesting because even at one point he's like, no one loves you when you're evil, and it gets really lonely. But that doesn't matter. All I need is just to see you, in pain and misery. Um, and that might also be because the person who is supposedly, in this case of the song, defined as evil, um, you know, he's probably a miserable person. And he's probably one that doesn't, have much of life. But when he sees everybody around him, I guess, in the sort of similar circumstances he is, by sort of putting them down, it somehow makes him feel better about himself. And I think that is something that is true to kind of the whole concept of evil. Instead of kind of taking the high road and trying to improve oneself, you just sort of take everybody down with you. That's the whole idea, I think, behind a lot of what people associate with when it comes to evil, is making other people feel horrible. And that's kind of what this song encapsulates um, as far as evil is concerned. And it's interesting. I mean, it's definitely, I think, one of those goofy yet a little bit more, but yet is addressed in, I think, a little bit more of a serious approach, but still inserted with various forms of humor. I mean, Voltaire is definitely someone you don't want to take his work, I think, a little too seriously, because it's just designed to be kind of just fun and based on just, trickery and um, being goofy and doing things that could be questionable as far as morally, but in doing so, kind of make us sort of laugh at the whole idea behind it. Which is really evil. So rather interesting and definitely worthy of recommendation. And it definitely has a very interesting and different approach as far as instrumentals are concerned. It does feel a little bit more sinister, but still a lot of fun. Second to last song that I wanted to briefly mention is Deliver Us from Evil by Bullet for My Valentine. Now, I'm not really in particular a huge fan of the artists that use that they use their vocal cords in a way that is designed to really scream out the words. But here, I believe they're used fairly appropriately and they're not really overused. So I think that's really ultimately what I think puts this song at a better advantage, at least for me. And it's definitely heavy on the rock and roll. And instead of addressing it through the perspective of someone who is evil or another person who is evil, this song takes it through the perspective of someone who feels like evil is somewhat creeping up on them and is taking hold of them. And the narrator ultimately wants to escape from this. And hence you sort of get the title "Deliver Us from Evil." He feels like that he wants to find sort of the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, because he feels so consumed somehow by some force that's supposedly evil. You could classify it as anything. I think you could want. It doesn't really say specifically, is he really possessed by a demon or anything like that. It's really not that specific. So I think you can definitely play around with the real interpretation of it, but largely speaking, when you're listening to it, it's primarily just about this kind of concept of someone who feels like that evil is somehow within them and they want to be rid of it somehow. And you really do feel like when the scream comes in that it's powerful. And I like how the song builds. Like, it doesn't just start off right off the bat with a yell. It kind of just starts gradually with the artist singing, and then eventually when he does use those vocal cords, it's used for, I think, a significant purpose, because it's really supposed to highlight his sort of torment, I think. So it's largely different, and I think rather interesting, and I definitely like the approach that they took. It's somewhat similar to Linkin Park, how they use the similar vocal technique, but at the same time, they don't overuse it. And in this case, with this particular artist, they don't or particular band, they don't overuse it. So I think that's definitely a plus, and it's definitely something that you could listen to around this time of year, especially considering the fact that it is the month of Halloween. Last one I wanted to mention is The Evil That Men Do by Iron Maiden. Now, this one is actually really interesting as well because it's rather difficult, at least from my research, to really tell the exact interpretation of the song. It's supposedly, the entire album, I guess, is supposed to be based off of a story, and the story being titled The Seventh Son, and I believe the title of the album is that, so hence all of these songs sort of are part of this sort of story. But it's not exactly clear as to what certain lyrics mean, when it comes to really the story, but you can tell that there is some sort of religious symbolism in there, and there seems to be this, I think, almost feeling of guilt on the narrator's part when you listen to certain parts of the song, and it certainly sounds that way through his vocals. But at the same time, I think it is definitely trying to address evil through the perspective of how it ultimately impacts not only you but the other people around you, because it ultimately somehow lives on, and is sort of ultimately sets things in motion, so to speak, further on within the future. So it is trying to address it from that angle of, the bad things that people do ultimately end up resonating into the future. It's not like they die with you, so to speak. So I think that's kind of what the song is sort of playing around with. I think it is addressing fairly different concepts, and I think you can bring different concepts to the table as far as the exact interpretation, but by and large, it was rather difficult for me to determine its exact meaning. But overall, the song's very powerful. It's definitely an Iron Maiden song. You can just tell by just the era that it's in, as well as the real heavy rock instrumentals that you would come to expect from its time period. That it's definitely very detailed, and there's a lot of depth, and there's a lot of power to it as well, and a lot of passion. So definitely a worthy recommendation of a song, and one that is, I think, rather enjoyable to listen to, especially around this time of year. But I think that's ultimately all I can say about all these songs. But that is my video for this entire month. Hopefully I can come by sometime again next year. Thank you all so much for watching. Hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year. I'll be sure to put links to all of these songs below so you may listen to them for your enjoyment. And I wish the second minion luck. If there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye, folks.